Too much
I
media.
find
Tune
too
in to
much
Welcome to
media.
Too Much Media.
Okay, hey guys. So today I wanted to discuss the idea of representation and why I believe representation does not matter. Now, in the past years, we have gotten this popularity of discussing constantly of why representation matters and how kids and little girls need to see themselves represented in media and just a overall like influx of people complaining about whether or not they feel as though media is trying to erase them from like existence and things of that nature. And as we like get into this new age of media where now, everybody and their mama has a smartphone. So basically we're all carrying around supercomputers in our pockets, and children are being trained into technology in a way we've never seen before. And now media has become a thing where everybody has access to making media. Like, look at me. I have my own media company that I've made off of a cell phone. Like, I needed nothing. All I needed was an idea and a cell phone. And now I'm the owner of my own media empire conglomerate without anybody's backing or say so of whether or not I can do it. And because this is a creative mastery channel where I'm trying to build a community of people who have a seek a life in the industry of media in whatever form that is, whether that is literature, whether that is television, whether that is film, whether that is modeling, whether that is acting, whether that is design, fashion, art, paint, draw, whatever it is you do that is considered entertainment or media. This channel is for you and for us to discuss the things that it takes to get to the places you want to get to, and like to kind of dissect what is going on in the modern day business of our fields. So when I think about how the direction of media is going and where we're going to end up within the next decade or so with media, I think back to all of these, kind of global justice fights that we've seen happening, of people discussing like how media is trying to erase us and how media is needed more representation and things of that nature. And when I watch people have these social discussions, although I do understand like what their point has been, I believe that it is an old talking point and one that we no longer should be wasting time discussing with people. I believe that the time that we spend discussing whether or not media is hiding and erasing us is time wasted that we can use creating our own media and our own representation that we ourselves can like inspire each other on and watch each other do, regardless of the level and the heights and the funding. Because I think that a big part of, for example, the Black community's main issue is that like the funding that is required to make like big budget ticket items, such as like, this year we had the huge hit Sinners and stuff like that. Those take so much funding that it's like, unless you do associate yourself with like, traditional media and traditional, sources of funding, you can't really get it to that level. But I do think that we need to take away this constant need for like doing what we see is done with the amount of funding that is needed for those type of projects. If we do have an opportunity to create that funding and we have the opportunity to create those type of projects with it not being watered down as well, because who knows if we had our own kind of bigger like handhold in the media company, if Sinners would have even looked a little different, or the story would have been told a little bit different, even more heavily, and I think it would have been, because imagine if we did have like kind of a bigger say in the industry, like even the ending of like how it ended with, Stack still living and like he's now like kind of this hip hop guy or whatever, like that story would have been different, just because our story would have been different. What we're up to and how things are going in our modern day life would have been different, and therefore how the stories are told would have been different. So I feel as though that if we're constantly focused on like funding amounts, like not too long ago, I feel like I seen like Burna, for example, talking about how, he's not coming on certain people's interview because it's like, do you even have like all the things? Like, he's a big dog, like he's a big shot, like he needs to go on like big ticket interview shows and stuff like that. And I felt kind of disappointed in him when I heard him say that, because I was like, well, you yourself know, well, not fully, because even him, he kind of comes from a privileged background of like having family in the industry and like knowing people who have been working with greats who have already kind of kicked the door down of like getting into like being a big artist and stuff like that. So even him, he speaks from a state of privilege, but it's like that state of privilege he speaks from, not everybody has. Like having someone like Burna come on your platform or allow you some space to like ask a couple questions and feature on your media platform would maybe then give them the ability to be that big thing that he's talking about. Like, do you even have this? Do you even have this? Like, I'm a big like artist and this, that, and the third. It's like you being that artist that you say that you're being, just letting someone even ask 2 questions to you on their platform could give them the amount of eyes they need to create the funding to have those things that you're complaining about whether or not they have, So it's like we have to be careful when we speak like that about each other as we get into this next stage of building media, because a lot of us are building our media platforms and our empires from our bedrooms. Like we're literally just in our room every day deciding what we want life to look like in the next 10 years. So it's like if you kind of shit on us, you're kind of closing down, where it's like in a couple years, you never know, Burna, if they're going to turn on you and we're all you have left for how to get your voice out to say certain things that they won't let you say. That in like, when you are like giving up yourself to somebody who else controlling what you're allowed to say, it's like after a certain point, if you have something to say that they don't agree with, they're not going to allow your voice to go through, So I feel as though when we discuss this topic of representation, we need to stop complaining about whether or not we're represented. We need to start being able to like, at this day and age, there's nothing that you can possibly say you're looking for that you can't find online. If you're saying you're black and you're female and you're gay and you're, and you're missing an arm and you have ADHD and you live in Saudi Arabia, and like down to whatever specific your like existence is, if you look it up, you could find someone somewhere who has what you're looking for as far as representation online. And if you don't have that representation, you yourself can just decide to be that representation by turning on your phone and becoming it. Like, it doesn't matter anymore to the point where we can be complaining about representation. You are your own representation with this new way that media is going. If you don't see yourself, you need to show yourself. That is how media is going to work from now on. It's going to be whoever has the gumption and the fortitude to come out and say, I'm here, and show themselves and speak up for themselves are going to be the people who are able to to be shown as representation. If not, you will be erased. So you have to decide now about whether or not you want to be represented. You can't allow media to decide whether or not you're represented anymore. This conversation is futile, and it breeds a lot of like complacency in our community, and a lot of like just victim mentality of like thinking that somebody's gonna come and be like, you know what, forget me. Why don't I just take all the time to represent you? And I feel as though I've had that issue in the past where it's like I never wanted to be the person to be the representation. I always wanted to kind of like give other people a chance to have like a platform to I can show representations of things that I'm seeing, because as an artist, that's kind of how it works. It's like you kind of are seeing out to the world. So what you're seeing is kind of what you're knowing to show. So it's not always like really like in every artist to want to show themselves as the representation. They kind of want to show their environment and the people that they're surrounded by and things like that. But it's like after a certain point, I had to realize too, it's like if I don't be my own representation, then my existence gets erased. My knowledge that someone with my exact down to like features, down to like even like saying like, for example, of that thing I was talking about where there's like levels to this shit, right? Of like, like there's high level media and then there's the rest of us who like just have a phone and a dream. It's like, okay, even my shitty version of high level media is representation that there's people out there who care enough to make shitty low level media. Like that's representation too. And representing the fact that art doesn't always exist. Art doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's not only, big ticket sinners level productions. Sometimes it's someone in their room with a microphone and no, what's it called? Visuals. Like the visuals is a picture. Like, that's also representation. And like understanding that now in this day and age, you can't expect someone else to be your representative. You need to like be okay with being your own representation and also seek your representation. You can't like sit around and wait for them to shove you in your own face. Go look for yourself because you exist in other places. Every time I get online, I'm always finding a new version of something I didn't know I needed to see, something if somebody didn't have the confidence to sit down and show themselves for, I wouldn't know even existed. So it's like you also need to stop. We also need to stop as a culture. Like that's what, I don't want to hear that conversation of like we need representation and this, that, and the third. It's like, no, we don't need representation. We need you to watch the people who are already representing you, because a lot of times we want like a pretty perfect package version of our representation, but you yourself are not pretty perfect and packaged. So most likely than not, your representation isn't going to be either. So for you to sit around and think that like you're going to have like this big movie out in cinema showing yourself and giving like little girls hope everywhere that they can be big too. It's like, why do you need to be big in order to feel seen? We need to be watching and like seeing our own stuff, because there's a lot of artists who are working on the ground floor of things, who are praying and begging that someone just gives them a chance to be seen, to be looked at, to know that they exist. So it's like, if you're complaining about representation but you don't want to support small artists, then you are the problem that you're trying to ask somebody else to fix. Like you can't, if you yourself can't be a part of the solution, how do you expect somebody else to come and solve the problem? If all you can do is point out problems, like you're never gonna see a solution, because no one's gonna want to give you the solution. Most problems in life have to be self-solved. You cannot always expect people to come and solve your problems for you. So it's like, I'm probably gonna make multiple videos about topics like this, but it is honestly true that like representation is not a topic that we in the Black community can afford to discuss anymore and complain to high media to fix for us. Like it's gonna be from us deciding that, you know what, we won't go to your movies and watch your big movies. We rather watch Tubi. If that's what we have right now and we gotta watch Tubi movies to the end, that's what it's gonna be. Honestly, personally, I've dreamed to act in a Tubi movie. I love Tubi. I like low budget movies. I feel like some of the best movies that I've watched, or like some of the best times I've had with like friends and family of watching movies, have been like low budget Black movies that are mad ghetto, and like don't, and the plot kind of a little bit doesn't make sense, and the actors are a little funky and stuff, and we literally sit there, watch it, and geek. Like, those are some of the funniest moments I've ever had in my life, of watching low budget movies with friends, where I'm like, where we're just like, oh my god, like, how did this fly? You know what I'm trying to say? Like, that, like, in itself is very joyous. And it's like, you need to find joy in your own representation and whatever it looks like in the state it's at, rather than look at someone else's version of what is representing them and complain that you don't have it. Like, that's very, like, comparison mentality. Like, comparison is the thief of joy. I feel like the conversation of representation is a conversation of comparison. It's like, oh, you have this and I don't. And it's like, okay, but we have a lot of things that they don't either. They don't have our level of, like, comedy. They don't have our level of, like, like, intuition. They don't have our level of innovation. They don't have our level of, like, ability to know what our actual story looks like, because you're going to give them the ability to decide whether or not we're represented, and then you're going to also complain that it wasn't represented properly. Like, recently I was, like, speaking to some friends of mine, and they were talking about how, like, there's a new movie coming out called based off the book Blood and Bones, which is, like, a Nigerian girl and a Nigerian princess who, like, is in a fantasy version of Nigeria, where some people have powers, and the powers are, like, being threatened and stuff, and they have to go, like, try to kind of get back the power to use their powers, because it's, like, against the law to use your powers and stuff like that. And, like, they killed off a big bunch of them because of it and stuff like that. And so in this new movie, they are recreating, and it's being funded by, like, a big ticket, like, type of Hollywood production, where they are now making the main character, who's literally part of her story arc is that she's a dark-skinned Nigerian woman, and they've let a mixed woman play that character now. And so a lot of the Nigerian community and the Black community as a whole is upset and complaining that that they have turned a dark-skinned character into a mixed woman. They let a mixed woman take that role. And they're also complaining that you, as a mixed woman who are seeing that this is technically supposed to be a dark-skinned character, why are you even taking the role at all? Like, why not say no? Say no. You guys are trying to erase a dark-skinned woman's existence and put me in it, and I won't take this role, because some other mixed actors and actresses have taken up that, like, steed of, like, wanting to be, true to their craft, and saying that they refuse to take on roles if the character is originally supposed to be dark skinned, that they purposely make sure that, they're not accidentally taking away potential roles for other actors and actresses. And, that is very commendable thing to do, but, it's not by force. It's like, you don't have to technically do that. You're also trying to, in a sense, saying that mixed girl is, her responsibility to not get fed, so that you can feel that you're being represented. And in my opinion, I feel as though that's not their responsibility. At the end of the day, in the white community, if they want to see, a Black movie in their version of representation, a dark-skinned person to white people is mixed, So it's like, at the end of the day, that's kind of their realm. And to say that they're not allowed to pick a mixed woman to play a role that they decided to fund and, like, create into a movie, in my opinion, I believe they have the right to do that if the author has given up the rights to the story. So it's like, that's also on the hands of the author to give up the rights to her story to allow these white people to whitewash it. It's like, you guys, I feel like this is more of, like, a argument against the author rather than the studio or, like, the actress or anything. It's like, this is how she makes her money, is by playing roles. And, it's kind of also, like, shitting on the fact that, they're appreciating good art. At the end of the day, a lot of times artists fight for their lives to be seen at this level, where people like their art enough to say that they want to create it into a movie, that they like the role enough, that the character that this author developed was so well thought out that this actress feels so touched enough and moved by the character to want to play it. It's like you're kind of, going backwards in a sense of what you're complaining about. Like in the same breath of complaining about representation, you're setting representation backwards by saying that you can't take away like you can't change a role or change. That's what art is. It's like you're trying to say, okay, push our work more forward, but then when someone likes it enough to take it, then you're complaining that no, but don't take it that way. But it's like you take it then and you make a movie. I feel as though if we're complaining that this dark skin character is being changed into a mixed role, who's to say that we can't make another version of Blood and Bones? You know what I'm trying to say? Like, it would be great if like a Nigerian production company also was able to get the rights to this story. I don't know what the author signed away as far as rights to the film, copyright and things of that nature. But it's like, us as artists, I mean, if we want to sell it to if the artist wants to sell it to what's it called, the type of people who want to create the character into a mixed person, it's like now it's like on the hands of us. It's like, okay, what's our version of a dark-skinned woman who has powers and is fighting in Nigeria to gain that back? And how can we fund a production? Maybe even if it's not as high budget, it probably still will be better if you guys, this main complaint is the skin tone of the actor. So it's like, okay, maybe what this looks like is in one movie, maybe it's better funded and it's higher quality, but all the characters look like white people, right? And then in another movie, it's like maybe it's less funded, but all the characters look and act really well down to the niche of what a real Nigerian would be looking like if they had powers and they were fighting for their lives. It's like you would have to give up one thing in both movies. You see what I'm trying to say? And it's like, but eventually, if you keep fighting for that, you'll get to the point where we have enough funding that there's big ticket people in our industry who refuse to whitewash us, who will be able to fund our art in a way where we don't have to have a mixed woman playing a Nigerian dark-skinned woman. You know what I'm trying to say? It's like, we have to also look at representation clearly as far as what are we complaining about, because artists are fighting for their lives to have their work seen. And at the end of the day, us complaining in a way that makes an artist feel bad for something where they sacrificed a lot to make this in the first place. So it's like, it being outside of just their brain in itself is such a feat. And I feel as though on this channel, like nobody better than us would understand that, of like what it takes as an artist to like get things that are in your brain outside. It's very difficult. It's such a process. It's such a headache. It's such a beautiful thing at the same time. It's like you're living in this like double world of like the dichotomy of like loving and hating your life. It's like really a thing where we have to be more appreciative of our artists and like be less judgmental of like their sacrifices. It's like a give and take type of thing. We shouldn't be complaining about representation anymore, though. We need to represent ourselves. We need to create our own art. Everybody has a hand in this now. Like, we have the tools. Everyone right now, because of the way that technology is so accessible to all of us, we are at an even playing field for like the first time since before the creation of like the military industrial complex. We all have 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head, and a body, and now we all have phone. Like, it's equal as far as technology. We all have supercomputers. So it's like, get out there, make some shit, represent yourself, and stop complaining about that shit. I don't subscribe to that, and even when we were having that discussion of them complaining about it being turned into a mixed woman, I did hear them because my friends are also native born Nigerian women. So of course they're like, feeling quite passionate about it, and I hear them, but it's like at the end of the day, it's like this is work that has to be done on the continent. So you can't really complain about something that's happening in America. This is the white man's land. You can't tell them that they can't decide how they want their movies to look, and that they want a dark-skinned person to them is a mixed woman. You cannot complain about that. So what are we doing on our grounds to create a dark-skinned version of this film? Because they were even not only did they complain about the film being casted into a mixed woman, but they were also complaining that the author herself technically didn't properly describe a lot of Nigerian, I guess like Nigerian culture and like Nigerian names and like ideologies and things like that. Like a lot of what the author used wasn't properly researched, because the author is a Nigerian woman, but she's not a native born Nigerian woman. She's like a first generation Nigerian, where her parents are Nigerian, but she was like raised and knows more about America than she does about Nigeria. So they were also complaining that like she didn't do the proper research to create Nigeria in the sense of the correct way that Nigeria actually is when you're on the ground. But at the end of the day, one thing I was telling them is like technically it's fantasy. So she's kind of taking in the notes of Nigeria and like and kind of, yes, you're right, watering it down, but watering it down based off her experience of what she sees Nigeria as, what in her head she imagines Nigeria to be based off what she's experienced from like the understandings that her parents have gave her. So it's like, in a way, it kind of creates another level of like intensity to it, because it's wrong. It's like, I don't know, sometimes I feel as though that's the best part about art. It's like, it needs to be a little bit wrong. Like, if everything's right, then that's just life. So what is art supposed to be? It's like, it's supposed to be a bit wrong. It's not supposed to be perfect and down to the detail of every single thing correctly, especially. And I feel as though that's most likely, more than not, why the author decided to use fantasy in her novel about Nigeria in the first place, is because she probably knew that she doesn't know enough about Nigeria to properly create a world where Nigeria is represented in a full light. She probably knew she couldn't do that, so she probably thought to herself, but I still want my culture to be represented in my art. So how can I do that? And fantasy is a great way to do that. Of like, now, even when I'm wrong, I'm right, because it's just in my mind. It's like, if I were to recreate Nigeria from scratch, and they erased it, and I refuse, that's kind of what it's like being a first gen kid in America, having to like kind of understand what Africa is just based off anecdotes and stories that someone else is telling you. It's like an imaginary place that you think of in like such a warped way that is nothing like it when you actually get to the actual grounds of the place. It's nothing like what you think it is. So it's like, when you're a first gen kid, a lot of times, like, a lot of your understandings of what Africa is or what your country is based off imagination. So it's like, if they were to take away her ability to ever even be able to get research on Nigeria, and she just could only, like, imagine we lived in that state, like, where it's like, we can't even like see Nigeria. Like, Nigeria doesn't exist anymore. And the only way she can recreate Nigeria is based off her, first of all, experience of actual Nigerians. So those Nigerians who come to America and now they act Nigerian still, but they also have to accommodate to American culture and start behaving an Americanized version of Nigerians. So it's like, if she can only use the Nigerian parts of an Americanized Nigerian, what does that look like to her? And like, that's the best part about fantasy, is like, you kind of get to make that. You kind of get to decide what that is. So I feel like I did understand their complaint as like actual, real, on the ground, native, born and raised Nigerians, but it's like, we as first gen kids also need a voice of like our warped version of Africa that we dream of and live in La La Land and what it looks like in our head. It's like, are you gonna erase that from us too, of like our Americanized version of Africa? It's like, at the end of the day, it's like, it may be wrong, but as we start to develop in Africa and hopefully start to see some of these first gen kids making their way back, it's like we are going to have to change some things on the land too. So it's like you guys understanding our vision of what we see there. It's like that's how culture moves. That's how culture grows. It's like it changes. It gets influenced by other people and by other cultures and by other viewpoints and perspectives. And it makes it richer. It makes it better. It's like, in a way, the fact that she is first generation and messed up some of those things kind of highlights what are some things, like what if Nigeria didn't look the way it looks currently? Like what if we did change some stuff into some of what us first gen kids think Nigeria should look like? Like, what does that look like too? And it's like, we don't have to necessarily, but it's like, what does that look like? And also for you to understand from our point of view, what does Nigeria look like to us? What do we think of when we think of Nigeria? What is like those types of things? Because as we start to because of technology, intertwine with each other more and talk to each other at like quicker rates and like start to speak and move around with each other more. It's like you guys understanding our perspective of what we see from you is just as important as like us understanding yours when you get here, because it's like there's a lot of stuff y'all mess up about America too, but it's like at the end of the day you add this like Afrocentrism to it that we love as well. So it's like I do feel as though the representation conversation is mute though, and we should kind of like move on from it a bit, and especially publicly stop complaining about it as far as like to them,
Attempting to get my attention. I don't like when you're acting too tempted. Relax, you don't need to be mentioned. You could be sent back at the entrance. I can tell you never seen a temptress. So cold, I decide what the temp is. I like when you talk cause you meant it. If I picked, I'm the one that I went with.